Yay!
And we're officially live. Oh my goodness. I'm so excited to talk Jane Austen with you.
Yay!
Like, this is perfect. I'm so pumped.
And we already have people here. Amazing.
Hi, Lady Gizmo. Yes, hi everybody. Please comment, tell us, if Pride and Prejudice happens to be your favorite Jane Austen or not. I would love to know which one is your favorite Jane. What's your favorite Jane book? Is Pride and Prejudice your favorite?
It's my favorite, though I kind of think Persuasion might be the best, but like Pride and Prejudice is like a very, very, very close second for the best for me. But favorite, yes, all the way, completely.
I am so honored to have Sarah here on my YouTube channel. Sarah is one of my new Jane Austen friends, and I'm so pumped. I'm so excited to be able to talk to you about Jane Austen. This is gonna be great.
It is always fun to talk about Jane Austen, and thank you so much for having me here. I'm really excited.
Oh my goodness, I'm so pumped. I mean, you're so sweet, and I'm so happy we met. And I linked Sarah's information down below in the description box. You guys can go check out her website, her blog, her Twitter. You should follow her everywhere because she's amazing.
Thank you. Please follow me everywhere.
We also did a blog post about Jane Austen fanfic, and I was like, I need to retweet this. This needs to go live and be, virtual. We just need to get this out. So everyone should go check out her blog. Oh my gosh. So I'm like, hopefully people are going to join in and help, Jane Austen fun. I'm so pumped. Oh my gosh. So Megan, hi Megan. Oh, welcome. Hi. I love Megan. She's so sweet. Everyone should be following Megan's YouTube channel. She talks about makeup and books, and I mean, she has all the vlog videos go live. Everyone should follow Megan. So Pride and Prejudice happens to be the only Jane Austen you've read. You do not need to feel ashamed. No. Although I have the other Austen books over here. I can read, I would say Persuasion and Sense and Sensibility should be the next two to read. I don't know if you agree with that.
I really like Northanger Abbey as well because Catherine Morland is the fangirl of my heart. So I would also recommend it, but it's a little bit harder to get into. But there's movies, which I'm sure we will be talking about tonight.
Yes, you also started a mini Twitter war, a little mini Twitter war. Yes. I had a Pride and Prejudice GIF off with you.
You're good.
Oh my gosh! So
I think you might have won.
Who, I won?
I think so.
I don't think I won. I mean, but granted, the 2005 Pride and Prejudice has some really great one-liners that just lend themselves to GIFs. So.
Yes, that is true, and they seem to be more abundant because I think the 2005 fans are younger and more with the GIFs.
So speaking of adaptations, so I am in 2005, Keira Knightley, she's my girl. I love the Joe Wright adaptation, but you are in the other Pride and Prejudice camp. So
I'm a 95 girl all the way. I understand the appeal of 2005, and it's such a beautiful film, but I feel like for the most part, I agree with I like Keira as Elizabeth Bennet a lot. I think she works as Lizzie, but I feel like the script is not good. And I don't understand how the script is not good when it is pretty much a relatively faithful retelling of Austen. But there's so many things I'm just like, no, that is wrong. And I will probably get into that.
Oh my goodness. I think we need to start there. Because this is part of, I think, adapting Jane Austen. There's certain things you look for. So what were you looking for that wasn't there?
It was more the things that were there that I didn't agree with. So the way they set it up earlier. So they set it earlier in more of the turn of the 19th century. So in the 1791-ish period, which was when Pride and Prejudice when she first started to write it. And 2005 is set more in the early 19th century. So you've got different styles and stuff, which is fine. But there are things that I'm like, well, you would be wearing gloves, Lizzie. You would be wearing a hat. You wouldn't have your hair down, things like that. That I'm just historical accuracy niggles. And then other things I mean, that last scene where they're, you know, walking across the field to each other, it is very romantic. I get that. I am a romantic at heart. I'm into it, but it's not Pride and Prejudice to me because I'm like, you're, what are you doing? You're walking out in your PJs. What is Darcy doing? And why is he going to like her dad when he's like isn't even dressed properly? It just, there are things.
I love that scene so much.
I love it.
I don't care.
I love it.
I mean,
But
like, he has that coat and like that has like this fan out effect. I mean, I actually love the way he's dressed in that scene.
I know. I'm super into the coat. I'm not gonna lie. And like I get that. Striding across a field, it's super romantic. But it's not Pride and Prejudice, is my feeling.
You're breaking my little heart over here. That scene to me is just, oh, I love it. I will always make my GIFs about it. I will always post the GIFs when he's walking across the moors at sunrise. I love it.
I will say that that parallel scene in 95 isn't as it is very like low key and held back and, you know, all repressed emotions, and he gives like just a tiny little smile, and I don't think that's enough. And so I don't love the parallel scene in 95 either. So I'll give you that.
Okay, so you're just a little, you're like an unhappy camper at that scene, like no matter what.
Yeah, I don't know if anyone has ever really done that scene well. Maybe Lizzie Bennet Diaries did it well. But we're gonna start going to fields. Yeah.
We're already going on little tangents when it comes to Pride and Prejudice because there's so many adaptations. There's so much to love. There's so much, you know, Jane and Lizzie goodness. Oh, I love it. I mean, that scene though, I mean, when he's walking, and I love the music, the soundtrack.
Yeah.
The 2005.
The soundtrack is beautiful.
That one wins. You can't take that one away. I mean,
I'm going more for like the 6-hour, like super accurate for the most part, 95 adaptation, just because it is so specific in its details, and there is Colin Firth, and you cannot fight me on Colin Firth.
I mean, so I think you're hinting at something like so important. You know, there's this whole change of medium where you have the novel, and if you're adapting it for a movie, things are going to be excluded, and then if you're doing a miniseries, you have other variables, and you can do other things like that, and so they lend themselves differently to their mediums. And I think
exactly, for sure.
I mean,
but I totally agree with that.
I mean, I have to admit, I went to this. So I live in DC, and so the Folger Shakespeare Library, I think this was last summer or the summer before, they did a Jane Austen and William Shakespeare kind of like co-exhibit. I mean, they kind of had to stretch it to make the two, you know, they're both English. They had to kind of make it work. They had like the shirt that Colin Firth, like they had the white shirt on display. So it's like, this is the iconic shirt. And then the part that killed me is they had this giant, like we're talking giant kind of screen for projector, where they had that like that scene where he's swimming in the pond playing on a loop. This is all the time. It was so funny. Like they had that was on the screen, and then they had the adaptations where other men were trying to be like Mr. Darcy. Apparently there was a photo shoot, and they had all these other times when guys were trying to like be like Mr. Darcy in the lake. I mean, it was so funny. It was so funny to me.
And like, as much as I love 95, I have a problem with that scene because not historically accurate, not accurate to the book. And like, it is like people I know swoon over that scene and they love it. And it's like, yeah, I get it. Totally get it. But also, could you not have represented their awkwardness in a different way? Is like, it was a bit gratuitous, I guess, is what I'm saying.
It was so
but apparently Andrew Davies, who directed or wrote 95, wanted him to be like naked or something, and I think that is also gratuitous. So yeah.
Oh no, I think
had naked Colin Firth people.
The naked thing would have been very different. The white shirt thing I think is hysterical because they're like they wanted it to be kind of sexy, but they didn't want it to be, you know, off the mark entirely. So like, let's violence, and now it's this iconic scene.
Yeah.
I mean, and I love how you're like, I love how I thought you were gonna be like, yeah, this is one of the reasons why I love Colin Firth, or like, we'll be like, this is one of the scenes. You're like, no, that didn't do it for me either.
No, it's just he's really good in the film, and just like super tiny moments, and just like there's a moment at the very beginning when he's watching Bingley and Jane dance together, and he just kind of gives a little smile and is like, all right, here's my dude here who's off flirting again. And it's so you understand the affection between the two of them, even though they seem like very different people. And so he's just like, okay, rolling the eyes. And it's just, it's this super tiny moment that says so much about their relationship without having to like actively go out and communicate how the reasons why they're friends. And like, there's another scene later on where he and Elizabeth just can't both know that they feel something for each other and can't look at each other. And it's just like, ugh, like tear your heart out good. Because he's just trying to look and trying not to look, but he does. And he looks away. And it's just like, great. It's great.
I love the details in the 2005 one. I mean, there's so many little details that just make my heart melt. I mean, even with Bingley, when he's like going after Jane and he wants to grab onto the ribbon on her dress.
Yeah.
I think it's cute. And then you have Mr. Darcy when Elizabeth, he kind of just misses her when she's walking through the doorway and it goes, there she is. And you see him kind of stiffen up going, oh, there's my girl. There she is. And he's kind of
a little bit stalkery there though, do you think?
Well, so not really, because he knew she was going to the ball, but I think it's a little problematic. She was looking for Wickham in that moment. I didn't know that. That's a whole other conversation.
That is a whole other conversation.
I love that scene because it's leading up to when they're dancing, and there's this moment when it's just them dancing, and like there's no one else in that room. It's just the two of them, and I'm just melting. It doesn't matter how many times I've seen this movie, and it's been a lot. Like,
oh, Angela, we're so different. I'm like, this is ridiculous. This is a terrible directing choice.
Oh my goodness, I love that scene. I think it's so sweet because I think it's, they're so focused, and I kind of love how Kira and him like have that eye contact going.
The eye contact I'm into. It's just like the everyone disappears around them thing when she doesn't want anything to do with him, and she's just thinking about how much she hates his guts. And he's like, oh, you're pretty. But so for him, like, that's all good. But for her, she'd be like, when can I disappear into the crowd and get away from this guy?
I mean, her other option was Mr. Collins, though. Like,
that's true.
Who would you rather dance with? I mean,
who would you rather? Yeah.
That sounded so wrong. Who would you rather? But the other option is Mr. Collins, who's like, I want to be close to you tonight. And then Mr. Darcy asks you to dance. You dance with Mr. Darcy. Like,
I mean, I would, but I don't know if Lizzie would, what Lizzie's like thinking is at that moment, because she clearly does not like either of them.
I mean, this is the ultimate, enemies to lovers story. Like, it really is the ultimate trope.
I know people say that all the time, but I don't know if I would classify it that way, because he doesn't realize that they're enemies. Like, yeah, he doesn't like her in like the first moment. And then after that, he's just like, oh no, she's pretty. Oh no, she's really smart. Oh no. And then he's caught his feelings and he's like done for it. So that he never has any conception that they're actually, like, to her, that they're enemies. He just thinks they're bantering and flirting. And she's like, no, you are the worst. I am arguing, So I don't know if I classify it as enemies to lovers.
I mean, I think that's a fair point. I mean, I've seen it come up before where the girls are harboring these emotions toward the guys. And they're going, wait a second. I thought, I didn't know this is what you really thought of me.
Yeah. And I think what 2005 makes really clear in the Hunsford confrontation, where he declares his love and she tells him off, it makes it very clear that she is attracted to him in a way, and like in a way that she probably doesn't realize. And I think that is quite accurate to the book, although Jane Austen makes it very much subtext rather than full text, you know? So I think that is one of the things that 2005 does really well, is to communicate how attracted they are to each other. Because the sexual tension is there in, like, the sexual tension has to be there in all of the adaptations, or else it's going to kind of fall apart. Because I think that's such a key thing in the text, that if you can't have that kind of chemistry there, it's just not, it's not going to work.
So, I mean, what do you look for in an adaptation of Pride and Prejudice? Because when I was making the thumbnail, I was putting all the key terms. I was trying to put all the key people along the sides. I mean, what are the key elements, or like, what are you really looking for when it comes to your adaptation of Pride and Prejudice? Because I feel as if you have certain criteria in mind.
I mean, I probably have my own. Are we talking in terms of like films and movies, or are we talking in terms of books that are doing variations on Pride and Prejudice, or all of that?
I was going to say, is it a different list?
I don't necessarily think so. It's just, you know, communicated in different mediums, right? So you need to see why these two people are constantly like pulling each other or going into each other's orbit, and the reason why they're there and why they keep coming back to each other and either fighting or debating or whatever. And that there's some kind of connection there that they can't quite, neither of them quite understand. So that's definitely what I want to see. You need to see the chemistry and the tension. What else?
I mean, I'm kind of curious. So for me, one of the other things I really look for when it comes to Pride and Prejudice is the family dynamic. I think the family has to be a part of this. And, you know, I held this up earlier. I think like the Lizzie Bennet Diaries, you know, they got rid of a couple of the sisters, and that was okay, but you still need to have the sisters. You still need to have Jane be a sweetheart. You still need to have Lydia, you know, be a little bit of a wild child. I mean, because those will influence Lizzie and the story. I feel like you have to have that Bennet family. They need to be in the story.
Yeah, I've seen it done where, like, I've seen pretty much in reading Jane Austen fanfic, you read enough, you see every kind of permutation possible. So I've seen bad Janes, I've seen good Lydias, I've seen, you know, absolutely terrible Mr. Bennets and nice Mrs. Bennets or whatever. And so I think you can mix that up there, but you have to have kind of all of those core characters in to have somebody to compare against. So like Lizzie needs her foils, right? So she needs her Caroline to be like that kind of, you know, bitchiness, and how it can go in two different ways, right? And she needs her Jane to say like, okay, Lizzie has her sweet side too, but compared to Jane, what happens? And Lydia, the same kind of thing, like both are outgoing people. So what happens? Why do they diverge in such different ways? So I think that is the reason why you need them there. I don't necessarily think they need to be family, but I think they need to be present.
I'm kind of curious what everyone else looks for. I just typed that question into the comment section. Like, what do you guys look for when you're adapting Pride and Prejudice? I'm really curious. I mean, I think that's fair though. I mean, the Lizzie Bennet Diaries completely cut out the parents, and then Lizzie would just randomly kind of tell you what the mother had said. So you don't really maybe need them in the narrative, but they do need to contribute to something. I mean,
you need some kind of adult figure. And I think I'm doing a read along on Facebook of all of Austen's works. And we were going from based on when she wrote them. So we started with Sense and Sensibility. We did her juvenilia, and now we're into the actual novels and into Sense and Sensibility. And I think I haven't gone back and read all of them yet, but I think almost every single one of her novels, the first chapter or the opening is the parents or the adult figures rather than the actual main characters. And I haven't like quite figured that out yet. And I think it's more of like I don't know if it's like a kind of a passing of the torch thing, or like this is the influence that your family has on you, and you need to see where people come from to understand who they are. And maybe that's like, we get that with Darcy, like once Lizzie goes and sees Pemberley and sees who he is and, you know, his family's home and how his family has influenced him in certain ways. And like when she gets the letter, the same thing, that all kind of comes crashing down on her. And so I think there's something there that you have to have an understanding of where people came from to understand who they are and how they're going to evolve from that early life.
I think that points to, you know, the backstory. You need to have a fully developed character, and that's something Jane Austen does so, so well. You
Yeah.
kind of drop in on the middle of the page, you know, that, you know, that in medias res almost like, yes, the story's kind of already been going. She's already had to deal with her mother, or, you know, Mrs. Bennet going, why aren't you married type of situation.
Yeah.
Like, they don't exist solely from like the start of the story.
Mm-hmm.
I think what's also, you know, really important and it kind of hinted at indirectly with this is the fact that this also represents society. You know, like they're, you know, the Bennets are lower middle class almost, and then you
Yeah.
have Percy, and he's coming from this wealth and luxury. So I think their families, as well as the connections within the families, you know, contributes to the story too.
Yeah. And I mean, the social aspect is what she's criticizing and what she's talking about throughout the novels, all of them. And you kind of have to situate people, and it's all about people going into their little boxes and how the heroines really are kind of escaping them, or in some cases staying in them.
Oh no, I just got like this flash of Anne Elliot being stuck in her little box, wanting so bad to get out.
And then by the end, she's, you know, away from her terrible family and out in the world with Wentworth. Or you think of like Emma, who is like in this like tiny bird cage of her home. And yeah, she rules the roost there, but it's a very, very tiny corner that she has seen and she has, you know, gone beyond. So it's all about trying to get them out of where they start, I think.
Oh no, I love how Austen's characters definitely grow and evolve over the course of the narrative. There's no static. I mean, they definitely, you know, Elizabeth, she has this entire emotional overhaul. I love it.
And I think that's I mean, that is what Jane Austen is doing in all of her novels. She's making them move and making them grow. And I read something the other day, I think it was from Sarah MacLean. I don't know if she said it, who's a romance author. I don't know if she said it recently or not, but she said all romance is kind of pretexted, that's not really a word, but let's go with it, on the fact that the hero and the heroine or the protagonist have to kind of make each other better. And so
Was that the tweet that I posted?
maybe, did you post
I
it?
posted that.
I was like, where did I see that? But that makes total sense that it was you.
I made that on Adobe Spark. At the heart of every successful romance novel lies the evolution of its characters. Through love, heroes and heroines grow not only into perfect match, but into stronger, better, and more admirable people. I made a little GIF.
Perfect. Oh my God, I can't believe it was you. That's amazing. But I think that's such a great quote. And it comes, and I mean, Austen is kind of the originator of that and of, you know, making her heroines grow and evolve versus like against her heroes, and making the heroes evolve them too. And I think that is probably why Pride and Prejudice does so well, is because you see both of them growing and changing at the same time. And it's all about, them finding themselves and growing as a person and realizing their own flaws and faults and trying to move beyond them with, different amounts of success, because it's not perfect. It's never going to be perfect. And they keep coming up against these moments where it's not perfect, but they keep trying to be better. And I think that is why Pride and Prejudice, it gets so much love and affection, is because you see that happening and you see how this like imperfect growing happens to them together.
I love that, because it's true. You want them to, because neither of them remain static and they grow together. I love that.
Yeah, and like it's growing dynamically, and I don't know if any of her other pairs really do it in the same way and with the same kind of balance, I guess.
Oh, we have comments. I'm so excited. We have comments like, oh, it feels so popular right now. So just from me to you, oh, she's so sweet. Everyone should check out her channel. Everyone should seriously go subscribe. She's awesome. So she's in my camp, the 2005 version. I have a friend. I have an ally.
Come on, my 95 people, where you at?
And then Krista. Hi, Krista. Hi. Oh my gosh. Welcome. You're not late. Hey, if you want to come by and talk about Jane Austen, you can come by anytime. We were talking about Pride and Prejudice, but we've been referencing some other books along the way. And then Kristen, hi. I was going to say, you commented earlier. Hello again. You haven't seen or read many adaptations, but you have the book Undressing Mr. Darcy.
I have not read that one. It sounds interesting, though.
I mean, what was it? Unleashing Mr. Darcy is the Hallmark adaptation of the book. I saw the second one in that movie, or the second movie from that series.
Was it?
Yes, Pride and Prejudice is one of your favorites. Oh, that makes me so happy. I mean, there's definitely there's something about Pride and Prejudice. There's adaptations galore. I mean, there's inspirations. I mean, there was Longbourn. There's so many people who want to adapt Pride and Prejudice.
Yes. And I think it's like, I don't know what the real reason is for it. I can only kind of give mine. And like, to say that, oh, it's such a universal story sounds so trite. But I think it is that kind of, the sense, it's such a well-balanced novel. Like, you have the humor, but you have the seriousness. You have, that tension that you really need, and it's balanced out by the comedic. Like, it's all there, and you have these two really interesting main characters. And I think Lizzie is so fully fleshed out that people just relate to her so much. And Darcy is fleshed out enough, but is also enough of a blank space that you can kind of write onto him. And he can become a lot of different things because he's not present for like probably a good half of the book. So how do you, and it makes him mysterious and it makes him different. And there's so much there that you can kind of, build upon and focus on.
That is such a great point. So my favorite of all time is Lizzie Bennet Diaries, because Mr. Darcy does not appear until, I believe, episode 59 or 60. He is not even present in this little, the Lizzie Bennet Diaries, for those of you who might not know or have seen it, you should. I mean, it is on YouTube. It is free. This is what you should do every night until you finish, and then you should go on to Emma Approved because they're all awesome. So in the Lizzie Bennet Diaries, he does not even appear. You just get Lizzie's kind of rendition of what he said, and she kind of, relays it, so it's all secondhand. He's not even present, and then he's in minimal episodes. I mean, he's awesome when he is there, but it's so funny he's not even present for majority of the show.
Yeah, and that is I think that was like, it was a necessary move for them at the time because the web series was such a newish form then that they didn't know how much they were going to get out of it and how far they were going to be able to take the book, like literally how many they were going to be able to pay for. And then when it took off and became such a thing, just that like constant anticipation for Darcy was like, I was watching it as it was happening, and I was like, come on, we've got Wickham, we've got Collins, we've got everyone else in. Where is Darcy? And that they held out until episode 60 of 100. Like, yeah, it was brutal to watch it, and then it was just like madness when it finally Darcy Day finally arrived, because that's what we all called it.
Yeah,
Darcy Day.
exactly.
Were you watching at the time? Like, were you watching as it went on?
So, fun fact for those of you who don't know, so my undergraduate thesis was on the Lizzie Bennet adaptation, because I was watching it live, like reciting as like that was my undergrad thesis. Because
That's amazing.
it was narrative adaptations of Pride and Prejudice, and so I cited Bridget Jones, the 2005 version. I obviously cited yours as well, but my case study. So that was my favorite, because as it was going, I was like working on it. I was like, please have him pop up. I didn't know he needs to be here soon. And we have more comments. I feel so popular right now. This is so awesome.
Yay.
I don't know. I don't want to butcher your name. Serena says hello. So hi, Serena. Krista, she's waving. She's so cute. And then you haven't read any of Jane Austen's books, but you've watched the modern adaptation. We haven't even talked about Bridget Jones.
We haven't talked about Bridget yet.
We haven't even gotten that far, which is so fun. So, my Pearl, there needs to be an emoji for that. That needs to happen ASAP. We should do like Jane Austen fangirls unite and start a petition for that emoji. And then, it's so the Lizzie Bennet Diaries. So they have a couple books that you can get, but they're also they also have their series Pemberley Digital here on YouTube. So I highly recommend it. They're in like 2 to 8 minutes, so you can watch one at a time, and you'll love it. It will change your life because it's just so awesome. I love it so much. And you were Darcy Day. It was so funny because I forget the date, but on Twitter it was Darcy Day one day, and it was on my feed, and I was so pumped. I was going, I remember Darcy Day.
Yeah, especially like it was the 5-year anniversary last year, I guess, and they were redoing it or like re-airing them. And Darcy Day was like up again, and I'm like, I remember this when it was like the absolute madness that happened.
Well, that's why I say 5960, because at the very end of episode 59, he's standing in the doorway and he says, Lizzie. So he says one word in that episode. So kind of his intro, not really. And then episode 60, you finally see him like not just and at the end of 59, he's just
the torso.
Yeah, I'm trying to describe it. It's like the romance novel book cover when he's headless. Finally get the rest of Mr. Darcy's head in episode 60, which sounds so strange.
Yeah, I was watching them at work at the time. And so I would be like on my phone. It's 12 o'clock on, Tuesdays or Mondays and Thursdays. And I would be on my phone, and gasping when these things happen. Like, it's Darcy, he's here. Oh my God. It was a whole deal.
I know. I'm trying to lean in through the comments. I don't know. Can you see them?
Yeah, I can.
Would you like to read them? Because I'm trying to lean in with my progressive glasses, so you guys get the little headshot. We have a few. This is so exciting. Away. I want to know your adaptations. I want to know your favorite Jane Austen, Jane Austen adapted book we have over there. I think Longbourn might be my favorite because it has that pastiche to it.
I have a lot of favorites because, and I want to kind of distinguish between, there are kind of multiple types of, we call it JAF, Jane Austen fan fiction. So there's the kind of mainstream ones that are being published by, the big 5 publishers. And then there's this whole separate cottage industry that's going on, all dedicated to Jane Austen variations, where people are doing pretty much mostly self-publishing these wildly creative Jane Austen variations. There's some others that are kind of, I guess, in between those spaces, but those are kind of the main 2. And I lump all of them together as JAF, but I think there's different audiences for each of those. So the mainstream ones are, I think, more kind of casual fans of Pride and Prejudice or whatever book it is being adapted. And then with the indie Austen adaptations, it is like the hardcore Janeites who know everything there is to know about Pride and Prejudice, have read every single adaptation they can get their hands on, have been, deep in the fanfic world for a really long time. And there's this whole like tight-knit community that comes around these indie adaptations that is a totally different, it feels like a totally different kind of genre, even though they all be Jaff.
I mean, I realized we haven't even touched on Bridget Jones. Do you want to touch on Bridget Jones?
We can touch on Bridget for sure. I do love Bridget. I don't really consider it an adaptation of Pride and Prejudice. I think it's more of an homage than anything. And a friend of mine called Bridget once like actually more of a Lydia than a Lizzie. And I've never been able to forget that because it feels dead on, especially in the first two movies. And so I kind of think like, that's why I don't want to call it an adaptation, is because I don't want, Lydia and Darcy to get together. But I still root for Bridget, and you still want Bridget to end up with Mark Darcy.
I love how he's wearing, okay, this is my favorite thing about Bridget Jones, is the fact you have Colin Firth, who played Mr. Darcy, as Darcy. I think that's my favorite part of the Bridget Jones. It almost doesn't matter the story. I just love how they have him doing the same character again. There is something so spectacular about that to me. I mean, and then you see him, his intro, he's wearing this stupid Christmas sweater. I mean, he looks ridiculous. And then she's also uncomfortable again, that bad first intro. I mean, I just love how they got him. I think that just made it for me.
Yeah. And like I don't know how you could do it now without Colin Firth playing Mark Darcy. Like, how else could it be so totally perfect?
Honestly, I just think that was like the highlight of the movie for me. Going back to the family, this is why, again, I agree with you. I think it's a very, very, very loose adaptation. I mean, the parents aren't really involved. I mean, she talks to her parents on and off, and she's an only child.
Yeah.
But her friends kind of, I think they get away with it because the friends kind of take on the role of the siblings. So they kind of take there's the Lydia of the group, there's kind of the Charlotte of the group. So they kind of give them characteristics. So they try and do that in a very subtle way, but it is different. It definitely is different.
Yeah, that's why I'm just like, I can't call it an adaptation, but I do really love it. And I love it for like what it is rather than the fact that it's an homage to Pride and Prejudice.
I mean, I think this also goes back to what we didn't get into before. Wickham the Bridget Jones Wickham, he's a big part of that story. And that's
yes. And he's actually, if we're gonna call that an adaptation, I would say that the Hugh Grant is my favorite Wickham, like ever, I think.
I mean, you're not supposed to like Wickham, but
no.
But Hugh Grant is very, very charming. So I think that itself in a very peculiar way. Because I mean, once you've seen him in Four Weddings and a Funeral and Notting Hill, like you kind of want to root for him as a romantic lead. So that kind of transcends in a very, I mean, there's something about that, with actors, you associate them with certain roles and characteristics and stuff, and you kind of have this transcendence when it comes to different roles. You're like, yes, I remember you as this character, and therefore, I'm still going to attach that type of detail to here. And the fact that he plays Wickham and as Hugh Grant is that kind of always strikes me as just really noteworthy.
I think it's just like, it's kind of a testament to how charming Hugh Grant is that you can like root for the bad guy who was like clearly the bad guy and clearly wrong for her from the beginning. And you're still kind of like, well, I don't know, maybe she can like reform him. Maybe it'll be fine. And maybe he's like Hugh Grant enough that it's okay. But then you have Colin Firth there. So you kind of can't Colin Firth is going to trump Hugh Grant, right?
Those are people
right.
Please comment.
I would love somebody to agree with me in the comments here.
Colin Firth. Who would you choose? Who's your
But like, I think that it's such an interesting comment on Wickham too. If you can have somebody as charming as Hugh Grant and make Wickham look charming and make it understandable why someone like Lizzie would fall for a Wickham. Because I think with a lot of them, you kind of feel that from the very beginning, like, oh, you're smarmy, or you're, there's like, you get that feeling that something's not right, even if you haven't seen, you haven't read Pride and Prejudice, you haven't seen a Pride and Prejudice before. You still, I think, would get the sense from all of the Wickhams in whatever adaptation, like, no, something's not right with this guy. But Lizzie clearly doesn't see that. So you need to be able to see her side of things. So I would love to, like, I think that's such an interesting way of looking at Wickham, is through the Hugh Grant lens of like super, super charming.
Oh no, I mean, I think this is such an interesting conversation and point is even in my 2005 adaptation, I mean, they chose a Wickham, I forget how they phrased it. Because I'm that person. I was listening to the DVD audio commentary one time where, the directors and actors commenting on the movie. And so Joe Wright was having a conversation. I forget if he called him beautiful or handsome. Like he kind of said, we wanted someone who didn't look evil. Like we didn't want someone who gave off an impression.
And so still kind of looks evil.
But it was so funny though, because he made the comment saying, like they were kind of going for that whole wolf in sheep's clothing type of situation where you can't really tell by looking. But when he starts to offer to pay for ribbons and stuff, you're going, okay, this is a little fast. This is a little.
Yeah.
So they kind of achieve that kind of little red flag moment early on. But I thought it was really interesting. I mean, there's something about Wickham. I mean, Lizzie doesn't see it at first.
Yeah, and I don't know how much of my interpretations of Wickham and adaptations are more from, having read the book and having seen so many adaptations and knowing like, oh, okay, well, here's Wickham. Here he comes. I know already who he is and what his purpose is. And so I don't know if that is influencing me more than anything.
The Lizzie Bennet Diaries has my least favorite Mr. Wickham. This is not as an actor. I mean, the guy is great. I have no problem with the actor.
Yeah.
First to sliminess, he wins as far as I
know.
This guy wins.
Oh, and you just want to shake Lizzie and be like, girl, what are you thinking? Because you can, you see it immediately. And she's just clocking it as him being kind of a bro-y dude. But it's just, I'm just like, what? I get why you probably don't like Darcy on first impressions, sure. But this guy,
Jess from Me to You says Colin Firth and Hugh Grant are both awesome. So it looks like we're just no one's gonna tell us who. No one's gonna tell us if it's Colin or Hugh.
Come on, guys.
Oh my goodness. Well, I mean, I also just had a random aside kind of moment thinking, oh, they're both in Love Actually with Keira Knightley.
Yeah.
I had that random little kind of digression tangent thought. It's like, oh, straight thought, but they're both.
I think all British actors just kind of congregated into Love Actually, though. And the Harry Potter movies, all British actors just get work there.
I mean, my favorite thing with Harry Potter, okay, so I love Emma Thompson. I think she is phenomenal.
Yes.
Sense and Sensibility, another Jane Austen.
No one's going to argue with you that Emma Thompson is awesome.
But I love how she's Professor Trelawney. And again, at first, I was a little, when these movies were coming out, I didn't make the connection that she was Emma Thompson. It took me way too long to realize that. Way too long. Love her.
You got to give it to Emma Thompson that she can, fully inhabit a role. And she can be Eleanor Dashwood at 19 when she's well into her 30s. Go Emma. Of course you can. I believe you.
I'm putting a Twitter poll out there. If no one's going to comment and tell us if they prefer Colin or Hugh Grant, I'm going to take to Twitter.
All right. Come on, Twitter.
I was just really curious. So, okay, we're talking about Bridget Jones. But so, was there anything else when it came to Lizzie Bennet Diaries you wanted to touch on?
What can we say about Lizzie Bennet Diaries? That is an example of really great chemistry between Lizzie and Darcy. Like, I think they are phenomenal. I was such a Lizzie Bennet Diaries fan because of the two of them together and because of Ashley Clements, who played Lizzie. I thought she did such a wonderful job doing it. And the Lydia there is such an interesting interpretation.
She is
That,
the Lydia I like.
yeah, she's the only Lydia I like.
She is the only Lydia, and I think I've seen every single movie adaptation, including the Bollywood ones. Like, I've seen every adaptation ever, and she's the only Lydia I actively root for. I don't know if it's the actress, I don't know if it's how they kind of gave her own little twist. She is the only Lydia I like.
Like, I don't think Austen wants us to like Lydia because she doesn't give us any, redeeming qualities about her. She's just, loud and silly and outgoing, and that's it. And so I don't know if Austen, and she doesn't get a terrible end in Pride and Prejudice, but she doesn't get a great one. It's not like, I mean, I don't know if you would call it a full, punishment to be with Wickham forever and knowing that what that relationship is going to turn into. But it's also not, it's not like a slut shaming thing where you've done, this terrible thing and running and eloping and all of that. But she doesn't, get the traditional slut shaming end of, prostitution or death because of her slutty ways. But I don't feel like Austen wants you to care that much about her. And she doesn't, she gives her such a non-ending ending that it's just like, she's there. She's the catalyst for bringing Lizzie and Darcy together finally, and Lizzie fully recognizing, her feelings for Darcy. But it's so much like the Lizzie Bennet Diaries does such a good job of giving Lydia some internal feelings and emotions, and you understand where she's coming from and why she's doing the things that she does.
Oh, I love the way they adapted her for the Lizzie Bennet Diaries. I completely agree, though. There's it in my 2005 adaptation. I'm still gonna defend this. So there's a moment when Lydia is saying goodbye. I mean, she goes to dinner. She's kind of a little bratty when Lizzie tries to take the wine away from her, even though she's too young. And she goes, "I want to drink my wine. I'm a married woman now. I can drink my wine." And so the dinner plays out, very awkwardly and uncomfortable or whatever. And then she's driving away with Wickham, and she's waving goodbye, and he pulls her down into the carriage, and you just have this moment of, oh, she's gonna have a great life. Like, oh gosh, like this is just the guy. Like, he pulls her down, and the way he does it, I kind of have this moment of, I mean, I always think she's gonna end up in an abusive relationship. That's the way it always kind of plays out to me in that 2005 adaptation. Like, Lydia's not gonna be happy with this.
Yeah, and like Austen says, they sink into indifference. Like, that's what happens to the relationship, and clearly it means like, they're both running around on each other, and they're just, it's not a happy relationship. There's no sense of felicity or equality between them. But she's married, she's respectable, she gets off easy considering what she's done to the family, and like that's fine. So I feel like Lydia in Lizzie Bennet Diaries gets so much more of a validation at the end, and so much more of a good end than, and like with the sequel where it actually goes into what happens to Lydia afterwards.
I love this book so much. I love it. I mean, mini spoiler, guys, you guys need to get this. Like, you need to get this book. And on the back, I love this quote. So it says, "You're only a supporting character if you let yourself be." And I love that so much. I love that.
And like, that's Lydia, and she thinks she's the lead actress in, like, canon Lydia thinks she's the lead actress in her story, and it's kind of really, she's important, but she's not the heroine.
I mean, I love, okay, so this is a spoiler. If you guys haven't seen the Lizzie Bennet Diaries, cover your ears for a second, pause, mute something. So the way Wickham destroys Lydia or really hurts her is that he films them having sex. And so they have a sex tape. And so she does not end up with Wickham. They break up. There's no marriage. There's no forced relationship. They break up at the end of the Lizzie Bennet Diaries. And so this book picks up after the breakup. And it's so great to see her character evolution in this sequel, which has absolutely nothing, there is no original. Like this is its own entity. This is its own original kind of production content. And so it's so great to see someone kind of give Lydia a voice, and you still like her. You're rooting for her. I mean, in the other ones, when I ever saw the actress who played Lydia in the Hunger Games, I'm going, I don't know if I want you to survive this. I was just like,
damn you, Lydia.
I mean, it was so weird. Again, with actors, you carry over their, there's something to me when I just always remember, because I don't know if I have a good memory or whatever, but I always remember the actors and who they played. And so when I saw her in the Hunger Games, I'm going, you're Lydia. I don't know if I'm rooting for you to win the Hunger Games. But no, I just love how they gave her own story here. I think it's brilliant.
Yeah.
Add this to your to-be read list on Goodreads. It's been out for a while, so hopefully it's on sale if you want to go get a copy. Just saying. But you do a lot with editing. So one of the things I'd written down was, you worked and you were, you edited Jane Austen fan fiction.
Yeah.
I mean, that's amazing. I mean, would you want to tell them about the press and doing that? Because I think that's so cool.
So I'm primarily a romance editor, but I feel like Jane Austen adaptations kind of fall as a subgenre of romance. And so I've done I've edited a few Jane Austen variations, and some of them are, so you get retellings of the original story, just put in a different context or in a different place. And then you have full out variations where it's basically a what if. So what if you change this tiny moment in the story? Or what if not even a tiny moment in the story, but maybe a tiny moment in the past that changes the family dynamics, that changes how, a character sees themselves and presents themselves to the world. So there's these two different things. So I've done variations and retellings. And there's this, like I said, there's this whole kind of cottage industry around indie Jane Austen adaptations, which is really cool. And it's a really involved community that really cares about Austen and cares about the story and cares about Lizzie and Darcy. And these are, they're people who've been in this community for, 20 plus years. Like it's a long-standing community. It's a very loyal group of people. And kind of once you get into it, you're good and stuck into it. So I've been into it for about 5 years or so. And I started reading fanfic online, actually coming out of Lizzie Bennet Diaries, because I was obsessed with Lizzie Bennet Diaries. And when I get obsessed, I go to fanfic because I need more. And I ran out of Lizzie Bennet Diaries fanfic because I've read all of them. And then I ventured over to Pride and Prejudice fanfic and realized that I would never, ever run out of fanfic ever again, because it is just that huge of a fandom. So I started sort of meeting people in the fandom and talking to writers, and I started betaing, so just kind of editing for people who were posting their stories online. There's lots of different Jane Austen boards that people kind of develop this community around. And one of my friends said, one of the people who I was betaing for said, hey, you're pretty good at this and you should do this. And so I had been thinking about it. I had worked as an editor before, just not for fiction. I was a medical editor of all things. And so I ended up starting this business doing romance editing and Jane Austen editing. And it's super fun to have kind of made my hobby of reading Jane Austen fanfic my business.
I love that. You're so inspiring. Like, you turned what you loved into a profession. I love that so much. That makes me so happy.
So it's fun. And I get to read romance all the time, and I get to edit, which I love to do. I love the editing process, and I love the nitty gritty details of, correcting grammar and stuff, because I am, a grammar pedant, but I also really love the kind of overarching, like, let's look at how the story is kind of held together and how we can make the structure stronger type of thing. And so I've done work with a bunch of indie authors who self-publish, and then there's also a small press called Meriton Press that does that actually publishes Jane Austen variations, and primarily that's what they do, is just all Jane Austen variations. So I've done some work for them as well, which is very cool.
Oh no, I think we need to have another live stream where you just give advice on how to write romance novels. That needs to be a thing.
That would be fun. I would love that.
I mean, honestly, because you're just so sweet and you're so eloquent and thoughtful. I'm like, you're just so much fun to talk to.
You too.
And nobody has responded on Twitter. I was trying to check, so nobody's actually going to say if they prefer Colin Firth or Hugh Grant. Apparently, that is not going to happen tonight.
Come on, guys. We all know who wins anyway. Come on.
Hey, you're still waiting for people to join your camp. I mean, my 2005 friends are here.
That's true. Where are my 95 people? God.
I know. Nobody's, so we also have to talk about kind of, I don't know if he's the elephant in the room, but he's definitely something. The only guy from Pride and Prejudice I haven't talked about yet is Mr. Collins.
Mr. Collins. Who is the weird foil for Mr. Darcy, and like such a like people who you would never want to compare, but are actually like perfect foils for each other in terms of, how they approach Elizabeth and how their own sense of pride and everything kind of works against them, and has them present themselves to the world in such an off-putting way.
My favorite, again, my 2005 version, I love how Mr. Collins goes up to Mr. Darcy to introduce himself, and you see the height difference.
The height difference is so good. Like, I will give you that. That is excellent.
I love that. And you see Mr. Darcy, his hand is on his hip, and when he turns, he almost smacks him. And you see Mr. Collins just being so awkward. And then when he finally gets his attention, everyone in the room goes, they go silent, and they're watching just this awkwardness train wreck occur. It is just, it's out there. I love that scene.
What else can we say about Mr. Collins? I think there's actually interesting things to say about Charlotte, and someone who is, again, another foil for Elizabeth. Basically, all the women in the story are foils for Elizabeth, and such a different. I really like Charlotte and her practicality, but her lack of romance, I kind of can't get behind, because this is why I'm here. Like, I love, Jane Austen's social critiques and all of that, but I'm here for the romance. And that's, I think, why most people are kind of into Pride and Prejudice and into the fanfic and the whole deal, is because they want to see Elizabeth and Darcy get together.
I just saw Jess's comment, and I'm looking for it on my bookshelf. I have that book, Epic Veil by Claire Elizabeth. It's over here on my bookshelf somewhere. I don't know where, but it's here. I promise. That's also another good adaptation. Oh my goodness. I love how you say, I love how they are foils, though. I love how you're also very literary in the way you're saying that. I'm getting this flashback to when you're in high school and they're going, define foil on your English exam. I remember taking AP English, and it was a little like one of the AP questions. But no, I kind of loved that, again, going to the Lizzie Bennet Diaries, I loved that it wasn't her giving up her future romances or her relationships. It was, she wanted to settle in her career. But even then, in my little head, I'm thinking that's also less of, you're not stuck in your career. You can always change it. So this is what, like, for the time being, because she had her student loans and she had other obligations. So it wasn't so much her giving up her entire future or ending up in a relationship to get out of. Like, it was just for kind of, for now I'm going to settle. And I kind of like that they gave her an out like that. Whereas the other ones, for the time period, once you marry Mr. Collins, you're kind of
stuck forever.
It's like, hey, you're never getting away from him.
Yeah.
I saw that. It was like the dinner scene. He's like, what excellent potatoes. I love that. Okay, again, you got to give that to the show. Like, you have to give that to him. And he's like, what excellent boiled potatoes. I will never not tweet that GIF. He's got this like look in his eyes. There's just something about that guy.
Yeah, he's so painfully awkward. I feel like he's like a great example of awkwardness, and the 95 guy is so he's just so greasy and like slimy, and you kind of feel like
He's
everything's
cringeworthy.
moist and
So cringeworthy. Like
yeah,
I'm uncomfortable watching him, whereas the other guy makes me laugh. And it's not
yeah,
it's one of those you don't want to be mean and like laugh at him, but he's just so entertaining.
yeah.
I love it when he says to them, I'm gonna read to you for an hour or two after dinner, and you're just going, yeah, they really want you to read to them for at least an hour or two. I
I'm
mean,
going to sleep then.
I mean, your guy, every time he's on screen, there's this scene where he kind of leans to the side and does this wave with this just it
And
looks
does like the hair, the like greasy hair coming down. It's just oh. But yeah, I think those are kind of two sides of Collins, right? Like the awkwardness and the really kind of cringeworthy, I don't want to be around this person type of thing. Where it's like, which one wins out here?
I mean, I feel I think I feel worse for the Charlotte in your version than in my version.
Yeah.
My version, awkwardness is I mean, that's okay. I mean, he's not actively being, kind of
Gross. Yeah. No, my poor Charlotte.
yes, your
To
Charlotte.
go back to Lizzie Bennet Diaries, though, I think they're so clever in adapting certain moments in the story, and especially that Charlotte storyline. And I think that's kind of the thing to think about in modern adaptations of Austen is how you're gonna adapt these things that seem so of their time or of Austen's time, and how you translate that into a modern context. And the ones who do it really well are doing it in really kind of clever ways and kind of circumventing that, okay, you're stuck with this guy forever thing, but you're attached somehow, and you have to get along with him in some kind of capacity. And so if you can do it really well, that's how you do a great modern adaptation, is just being very clever and very thoughtful about how you make that happen.
I mean, I think this is such an important conversation topic, especially because now in the wake of all the gender roles, everything's coming into play, Me Too, when you're adapting, there's certain things you have to consider and then eliminate. So in order to kind of bring the historical to the modern, you have to be very careful and you have to kind of make it unique unto itself. I mean, I think there's some things you probably can't adapt in the same way anymore.
And then you have to figure out, okay, how are you going to capture the spirit of this moment in a way that makes sense to modern audiences, but that somebody who's read the book can be like, oh, this is this moment. So that's kind of that's the struggle, is to know what to kind of leave in and take out, or what to do kind of an homage to, or to kind of represent it somehow.
You want to jump up? You wanna jump?
The puppy here.
He just woke up. I hear a little growling. He's like, here's my bone. I want it.
I promised people a puppy, Angela.
Yes, apparently on your Facebook, she's like, she has a dog and he's cute. Like, now I can see the bone. So, I mean, I don't just own bones. I have a dog somewhere down here. I like Lady Gizmo's comment, though. The 2005 Mr. Collins was harmless. He just wanted a wife. The opening line of the story applies to him also. That's kind of true.
Yeah.
Like a fortune, that's kind of Mr. Collins. He has a small fortune, but he has a fortune. So he must be in one of a wife.
And yeah, going back to that first line, that's so iconic.
He doesn't want to jump up. Maybe later.
Maybe later.
Okay.
Relax.
This is the bone.
Hi.
This is Max. He says hi.
Oh, he's very angry, clearly.
Well, I accidentally nudged him because he's sleeping by my feet. So I accidentally nudged the bone away from him, and apparently, You don't do that.
How dare you, Mom?
How dare I move my foot that he was sleeping on?
Yes.
How dare I? I mean, he promised me a puppy. That was his little cameo appearance, you know.
Yay!
And he's my little cutie. He's my baby. You have a real baby, but I have a fur baby.
Yeah, the real baby is actually asleep now, and hopefully will not wake up.
Oh my goodness. So what else do you look for when it comes to adapting Pride and Prejudice? I'm just curious. I haven't really.
So the tension or the chemistry and the cleverness, if it's going to be a modern adaptation. And then, you know, it's so hard, I think, to find, like, I can't even tell you how many fanfic of Pride and Prejudice. Like, I have a spreadsheet. It's crazy. My husband laughs at me whenever he sees it up. He's like, "So how long is it now?" And I tell him, he's like, "Oh God, okay." So like I've read a ton. And so if you can find something interesting and different, that's not like a new way into the story or a new way of, you know, showing why this story is still important and why we want to read it over and over again, but in a really original way and a really different context. Like, you're switching something, you're playing with the tropes, like something that makes it unique is what I really want to see. Because I've read the same, the same general retelling over and over again. But if you can make it something that I've never seen before, then that is cool.
So I'm kind of curious if there's a Lizzie Bennet, or not Lizzie Bennet, if there's a Pride and Prejudice adaptation you haven't seen but you want to see.
I really want to see the Brazilian soap opera of Pride and Prejudice. That it's not fully Pride and Prejudice. I think it's called something like Pride and Passion in Portuguese. And like Emma Woodhouse is in there. I think there are other people from various Austen novels in there. But I really want to see that and see how they're doing it, because it's like Brazil in the early 20th century. And that seems cool and different. And, it's also in like a telenovela form. So that would be very interesting to see. I'm very much hoping that Netflix, subtitles that and tosses it up on there, because I want to see it. I can't find any way to see it with English subtitles on.
I think that might be one of the very few adaptations I have not seen. So Netflix needs to get on that ASAP and needs to make that happen.
Yeah, if you speak Portuguese, it is out there for consumption. But I don't speak Portuguese. I really want to now, just so I could watch it. But yeah, come on, Netflix.
And nobody still voted. I was checking Twitter. No one's voting for the Colin Firth versus Hugh Grant poll. No one's gonna vote for that one. I'm trying to make that happen. No one's I mean, one person said they haven't read any Jane Austen fan fiction. Then I just asked people on Twitter what their favorite adaptation of Pride and Prejudice is. I'm curious. No, I mean, that's the thing about Jane Austen, though, that I think is absolutely brilliant. You can take her stories and adapt them for any time period. You can adapt them for any location. I mean, you have the Bollywood version. I mean, even then, we have all these American adaptations, and this was, set in England. She goes to Bath, it's just a kind of, you can just put it wherever you want. It's great.
Yeah, and I don't know, I don't understand how she did it, how she makes it that adaptable to so many different situations. Like I said, it's that universal thing, but you don't want to say universal. It's just a story that really seems to work in any kind of context, in any kind of culture. Like, anything can kind of play to that story.
I mean, it's so fun. I mean, I have a friend from Twitter. We were liking a lot of the same posts, and we kind of, ended up chatting. She's writing a Pride and Prejudice in space.
Yeah, totally. You can do that. Because you can write Pride and Prejudice in space. You can write it on an underwater kingdom. You can write it anywhere you want. It's going to somehow work.
People are saying, yeah, I guess everyone's just choosing both.
Yeah.
So okay. I'm letting it go then. I'm going to let this go. I'm not going to harp on it, I promise. And I already won the 2005. People are
I
mad.
mean, I suppose.
I kind of love how the one scene that everyone refers to in your adaptation is the scene you don't like. I think that's so funny.
And like I'm not necessarily alone in that. I like and I get it. I get the appeal for sure. But yeah, it doesn't rock my world or anything.
I get this. That's funny.
Like I'm alive in the world. It's fine. I get it.
I did not expect you to say that for the life. I get it. Oh my gosh. I mean, I feel like, love Jane Austen. This is
Yeah.
so fun. I'm having the best time talking about this. I mean, so, what else is there when it comes to Jane Austen that you just need in an adaptation? I feel like we've covered a lot. I
Yeah.
don't know what else. I think we already, and we talked about the family, the friends. My only other notes were like the themes of society, the themes and society. So, what do you think the themes that you need to capture, the elements from society that need to be there?
I think that so much of the appeal of the story to a modern audience is the love story. And so that's why I kind of keep harping on the chemistry and the attraction. And okay, you have people from two different worlds. And that's kind of or two different spheres, I guess. They're kind of it's not like the Bennets are poor. It's that they're gonna be poor if Mr. Bennet dies. But they're not poor right now. They're solidly upper middle class and they're doing pretty well for where they are, but it's such a precarious position. So we have Lizzie and Darcy occupying these kind of two different spheres that kind of can cross. This is a terrible metaphor. I'm really messing this up. But they're in these spaces that can cross, but they're not necessarily inhabiting each other's spaces. And so that is the kind of thing that you have to kind of bring together is if you're going to adapt it in some way. Maybe you make them so that they're both, both poor or both middle class or both rich. And then what is the thing that is going to be in opposition for them? Because there's got to be something there that makes it that kind of central conflict for Darcy is they're from two different worlds. So what is it about their two different worlds that is going to be the big conflict that they come up against?
You're so thoughtful and meticulous. I love how much you love these adaptations and how much thought you've already given this. I can tell.
I mean, I've been in this kind of world for a long time and not even close as long as some other people have been. But I've thought about it and I kind of know what I like in the adaptations and know what I'm looking for, even if I can't necessarily articulate it perfectly.
Oh no, I remember again, when I was doing, I feel, looking back, when I was doing my undergrad thesis, I was talking about all the different elements, and I was saying you need some sort of familial connection, you need to capture that classism, you need to capture, the gender dynamics. I think that's something that, now if you're adapting for a modern audience, you really need to think about, okay, she was a woman of this time. What were the implications of being a woman during this era? I think that's where a lot of my focus went on the representations of women in Pride and Prejudice, and especially in the adaptations of how are we representing women in modern day. So that was something really big on my mind when it came to adapting Pride and Prejudice. Again with Bridget Jones, she wanted to be the single woman career girl, and that was
and I kind of think that is maybe an important thing to focus in on, because Elizabeth Bennet is such a kind of feminist or proto-feminist hero or heroine that you kind of you can't have a passive, submissive, Elizabeth who's going to settle for anything less than equality with anyone, really, with Darcy or with anyone else. She stands up for what she wants, and that's I think that's one of the major appeals of Elizabeth Bennet. And so you have to have this kind of feminist Lizzie in some way that she understands her worth and she understands who she is and what what she values and is going to stick with those things no matter what. And then on the flip side, I think you have to have a Darcy who understands that and is going to respect that. And like, if you don't have a feminist Darcy, I'm out. Like, if there's a Darcy who doesn't respect his Lizzie, it's just like, no, that doesn't happen. That doesn't work for me at all.
I love how you called him a feminist Darcy. I love
Yes.
it so much. That makes me so happy.
Because I have this huge theory, and anyone who I've ever spent enough time talking about Pride and Prejudice with has heard me talk about this theory, is that there's always parity between Elizabeth and Darcy in the novel. So like they're as equally mistaken, they're as equally confused, there's equally, you know, in despair about where their relationship with each other is going. They're as equally in love with each other at the end. And I think that is such an important thing to kind of keep in mind throughout, is that they have to have that kind of parity with each other, and they have to have that kind of equality with each other. And so they have to, you know, love each other in the same amount. They have to respect each other in the same amount at the end. And that is, like, for me, that is the biggest appeal of Pride and Prejudice, is that it's that mutual respect between the two of them.
I love Lady Gizmo's comments. You like the opposites attract scenario. Lizzie poor and Darcy rich, because in the end she gets her happily ever after. She gets her HEA.
Yeah. And I mean, that's Pride and Prejudice is so much the underpinning of so many romance novels, especially historical romance novels, is the thing that is kind of, it's so much the grid on which that whole genre is built on. I'm doing that is actually what I'm researching this summer, because I have a presentation to do, or a panel to do, at a fan studies conference in Chicago about Austen fandom and how Austen influences the romance genre. And so that is what I'm diving into this summer.
I mean, it's really interesting to me. Again, so I'm pretty sure if you're watching my channel, you've heard me mention this before, but if you're new, you know, my dissertation is studying the romance genre, and the history is utterly fascinating. I mean, for the longest time, Jane Austen was just literature. She was just literature. And then World War II happened, and women had stepped up to the plate and taken over the roles of men. All of a sudden, they needed women to get back in the house. They needed to get women out of the roles that men had fulfilled. And there was this pinkening of literature, and that was the transition of Jane Austen becoming romance. That was the pivotal point in time during World War II, when they were trying to get women back in the house, and they're trying to, you know, make things more feminine and make them more appealing to women, and specifically. And that was the moment Jane Austen became romance.
Oh, that's cool. That's good to know. And yeah, that's such an interesting perspective. I never even thought about that. And there's always this kind of debate in the Jane Austen fandom, if Austen, and really probably in the romance fandom too, is like, is Austen romance? Do we consider Pride and Prejudice a romance novel? Because, like, okay, it ends in a happily ever after. It ends with, it's kind of all about two people getting together. You could argue that it's not necessarily all about two people getting together. It's about Lizzie's, you know, journey and self-discovery and all of that. And like, for me, I think it's not a romance just because the genre didn't exist when Austen was writing it, or writing the story. And because I think it's so much the underpinning of romance, that I'm just like, no, it's not a romance in itself. It's important to the genre for sure. Like, I think it's a cornerstone of it, but it's not, I don't qualify it as a romance novel. I know the All About Romance poll that came out, it's like the top 100 romances that they do every 4 or 5 years or whatever, and Pride and Prejudice was in the top 10, and people were like, nope, does not count, is not considered a romance to them.
It's so funny when I hear that, because in my mind, you know, in my own personal opinion, I honestly think Pride and Prejudice was one of the first romance novels unto itself, because I mean, the romance genre in one way or another, it's existed. I mean, we had ballads, we had oral histories, we had oral stories. I mean, romance has been in existence for quite some time. Like, it's nothing new, but the genre specific title, that was, that came out of, the 1920s, like 1930s. Like, that's when romance genre really emerged as a genre,
Mhm.
component. Like, romance has been in existence forever. And so it's really interesting when you say that, because there's a scholar, Pamela Regis, who has her, I think it's seven, or I can't remember if it's 7 or 8 off the top of my head. I think it's 7, but she has her 7 points of what romance novels, or what a novel needs to have to be a romance novel.
Mhm.
Pretty sure Pride and Prejudice meets all the criteria, but yet for some reason people don't view it as a romance novel, and that is utterly fascinating to me. Like, it technically meets the criteria, but there's just something about Pride and Prejudice that people think, no, this doesn't lend itself as a romance novel, even though it still technically qualifies as one.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so interesting that there's this debate going that like constantly rages about, okay, is it a romance or not? And like clearly we are on different sides here, but I like it.
Oh no, I mean, because this is the other thing too that I'm kind of fascinated by, is the adaptations, because I think that's also telling of how people view Pride and Prejudice, because you have Bridget Jones, which is one of the first quote unquote chick lit, which I have a
Yeah.
big problem with that title, but
Yeah.
but it was the first quote, chick lit, right alongside Sex in the City and things like that, catering to women. So again, it's like kind of a branch off of, and so, and then you have a lot of these adaptations, or some of these will qualify as fiction, and then you have the ones that do qualify as romance genre. So even the writers will kind of take what they want and go into their own
Yeah.
their own section.
Yeah, like I feel that the Jane Austen variations, especially in the sort of indie, um, the indie side of things, are 100% a subgenre of romance, like completely. But you have things like Longbourn or, Death Comes to Pemberley, just name two off the top of my head.
That one to me is a mystery
It's a
thriller.
mystery, and like those kind of more mainstream ones that can fit into like women's fiction, which I also have a problem with that kind of uh, with that term, and like those kinds of things that fit into different categories. And yeah, it's kind of like you pick and choose what you need out of Pride and Prejudice to get whatever end product you want, right?
Oh no, I think this is an utterly fascinating topic, and I was not
Mhm.
expecting this to emerge tonight. But I think this is so true, because Death Comes to Pemberley. That one is a mystery. That reminds me of like a Rebecca type of situation.
Yeah,
And then, I mean, again, Longbourn. That's literary fiction.
yeah,
I mean, there's something about Pride and Prejudice that just lends itself so beautifully to however you want to adapt it. I mean,
yeah.
that makes me so happy.
Yeah, and I would love to know what people think, like why people think it is so adaptable to whatever situation you want to put it in. And I've never seen a satisfactory answer that kind of sums it up in a real clear, concise way.
I mean, in my own personal opinion, I think it just has to do with how well developed everything is.
Yeah.
I've read, I mean, I read, 5, 8 books a week, and so you'll run into these characters that are, they exist on the page, or their story starts on page one, and there's no backstory, or there's very limited secondary characters. And when it comes to Pride and Prejudice, you have the friendships, you have the family, you have his friends, his family, you have all these characters, and then you have, all these plot points. So it's not just a linear progression. The way I mean, it's so well thought out, and
Hmm.
the fact that it's just such a well done narrative, and in every way, shape, and form, it lends itself so beautifully to people wanting to be like, yes, I want to be a part of this. I think just the fact that, I mean, you can tell there was a lot of forethought, and all the details, just like it's so beautiful, and you just want Lizzie and Darcy to end up together. There's this emotional appeal as well.
Yeah, and like every time I read it, and I've read it probably, I don't know, like 30 times in my life. Like I don't even know. But every time I read it, I am like on the edge of my seat, like, are they gonna get together? Like, is this gonna happen? And like I've I've read it. I've read X number of adaptations. They are gonna get together. But I am always like, I don't know how. And like that feeling can continually come up every time I read it. I mean, that's pretty good. That's pretty cool. I don't know what you did, Jane, but that's pretty cool.
This is why I think it can count as a romance novel, because you know the ending. You know how it's going to.
That's true. That's true.
See, I'm still going. I think it's one of the first. I think it's one of the first. I don't think it's technically like romance. I mean, romance genre was the title given after. You know, it's like you can't like go back in time and be like Terminator, like, hey, wait a second, timeline. But no, I mean, you know the ending, but it doesn't matter because you're along for the ride anyway. I mean, again, every single adaptation, they're gonna end up together. Be like, okay, how are they gonna be kept apart? What's she gonna be mad at him for? What's gonna happen with Lydia? You have all these questions, even though you're like,
yeah.
This. I love that. I love that so much.
But would you consider something like, a romance from the medieval period? Would you consider that a romance novel or part of the romance genre?
You're asking me if I would consider it?
Yeah.
I mean, this is the
Put
thing.
You on the spot.
Like retroactively claim something, which is, this is the whole issue you run into when you come up with terminology after the fact.
Yeah.
Something in a box that wasn't meant to be put in a box. When you built, it's like you go to you built something, and then you try and bring it to FedEx, and you're like, wait a second, which box does this go into? It's like, okay, it's problematic in quite a few levels. But when you think about the definition, yes, it can be categorized as such. Was it meant to be? Probably not. Jane Austen wasn't thinking, I'm going to write a romance novel, because that wasn't a thing.
Yeah. But yeah, I guess, I mean, I 100% consider it like a foundational text for the romance genre, but I don't know if I can fit it into, is it a romance novel to me?
It's technically, so I've memorized this. The definition of a romance novel is an overarching narrative that focuses on two or more people and/or a couple. It does not have to, and so this is the whole. It can be, you say couple because you don't want to have the gender-specific normatives.
Yes.
You can have you have a narrative that focuses on a couple and then you can put in parentheses and/or more people that culminates in happily ever after or happy for no ending. And that is Pride and Prejudice.
Yeah.
You can tell I've written that.
You've written that chapter already.
Well, it's so funny because when you go to do your presentations and you have your lit review, I mean, that's the first thing I always have to open with. And so, you got to be ready with that definition of a romance novel focuses on a couple and/or more people.
Yes.
Culminates in happily ever after. And Pride and Prejudice meets those two. That's like the minimal definition. But then you get into like the Pamela Regis with her actual, breakdown. And then she kind of is like, okay, A to B, like which one here, which one there. So, I mean, again, but based on her criteria too, it works.
Yeah.
This is a fascinating discussion.
Yeah. And so do you have to convince people that this is, this romance genre is valid when you're doing your lit reviews and stuff? Do you have to go in and be like, this is what the romance genre is, and here's why it's important, here's why it's valid, here's why I should be researching it, type of thing?
It was so funny. So I went to the Researching the Romance conference at Bowling Green University.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a conference on the romance genre. I remember I was so excited when I got to my literature review slide and I went, I don't have to give you the historical context of what romance is. I don't know. Oh no, you already understand. But I'm so conditioned because so many people don't know what romance genre is. And even people even people who think they know what romance genre is sometimes don't. I love it when people say Nicholas Sparks, and I'm going, Nicholas Sparks is not a romance genre novelist. I mean, people will mess that up. And so I usually do have to kind of, do my little overview of this is what a romance is. And depending on how long my presentation is, I'll spend a few minutes on it to try and give them some context. But yeah, I think it's really important to provide some, foundational knowledge before I dive into anything else presentation wise, because there is this misunderstanding when it comes to romance.
Yeah, and I think that, there's such a stigma against romance in that, there's a total gender thing going on there. And I think the same kind of thing applies to fanfic. To go back to the fanfic side of things, is just like, oh, it's the silly little genre that, these people are just, are creative enough to come up with their own characters, blah, blah, blah. and so they use somebody else's characters when like, and that stigma is so hard to get past when it comes to fanfic and not being sort of taken seriously as an important kind of, not even just a training ground for writers, but a place where you can be a writer. And like with Jane Austen, because she's in the public domain, you can be a writer of Jane Austen fanfic, and that's perfectly valid. With other ones where you can't necessarily be selling your fanfic, it's still like, it still has value, and to like make other people understand that it has value, and to make people understand the romance novel has value when it's so derided by so many people is the challenge, I think.
I mean, it's so interesting when you say public domain because you run it again. I think this speaks to something right here because the first thing that comes to mind is Shakespeare. You have people adapting Shakespeare, and when you adapt Shakespeare, that's real literature, and
Yeah.
you'll run into the movie adaptations of, oh well, this is real film, and meanwhile, I was watching, this just happened, like Unleashing Mr. Darcy, the second one. I was watching that on Saturday night for Hallmark. Like, I mean, what's wrong with that? Why can't that be your Saturday night watching Hallmark? Or it was Saturday.
And like there's something about Austen that, while Austen like is considered one of the greatest writers in the English language, blah blah blah, and it's still kind of like, especially with all the film adaptations and stuff, she's still sort of seen as this girly thing. And it's, these silly people who love Colin Firth, and the whole, there's still a lot of stigma around that. And I think, like you said, the pinkening of Austen and of literature compared to something like, okay, I'm going to adapt Shakespeare. Like, that's a totally different ballgame for people. And like, Shakespeare was writing fanfic, really, if you want to like get into the nitty gritty of it. I could consider Shakespeare as writing fanfic.
I mean, this is my own little personal qualm, is when people start saying, oh, well, she didn't fall in love, she didn't get married. I'm always so impressed that she was able to write about it even though she didn't experience it. I'm going,
She's
there's
a writer.
exactly. I'm like, she was creative, she was intelligent, she saw people around her, she was intuitive, she was able to observe, and she captured the human experience brilliantly. And so just because she didn't have her own happily ever after doesn't mean she was writing outside of the norm. I mean, people who are writing about dragons, I mean, there's no I'm sorry, but there's not. I mean, if you see one, please let me know. I mean, Harry Potter's great, when he's going after that golden egg and the dragons, protecting it. It's awesome. But there's no dragons. So why is her not getting her happily ever after viewed so differently? The way people discuss her as a writer is also kind of troubling to me to some degree.
Yeah. And even in like academic circles, like I used to be a Shakespearean, and I studied Shakespeare, and like there were never any Austen classes at my universities. And like you were taught Austen in 19th century lit, but Austen's become so much a part of pop culture that it seems that it's kind of her, academic cred has been lessened because of that. So my university introduced an undergrad course for Austen, but it was more of a way to like get butts in the seats and get enrollment up, because they knew that people loved the adaptations, would watch the adaptations, and would have like a passing familiarity with Austen. But it wasn't supposed to be considered like a rigorous academic English course like a Shakespeare course would be. It was, it's like, come get your arts credit by watching Jane Austen type of thing, or reading Jane Austen.
I remember when I was an undergraduate, it was in the same semester, I did a Shakespeare on film and a Jane Austen on film class. I did both of them. And my Jane Austen class, I believe, again, I'm trying to think back a few years. I can't remember if it was 3 or 4 guys.
Yeah, I believe it.
There was 3 guys, and I'm pretty sure they were there because I went to I went to Bentley for undergrad, and it was a business school, so it was predominantly male. So that was the one classroom where the men weren't, were in the minority. I'm pretty sure they were like, hey, I can get a date in this room.
They should have figured that out.
But like for the Shakespeare class, there was so much more diversity. I mean, it was, the 50-50 dynamic. And I mean, I noticed that right away. I'd walk into one classroom and, it was just a totally different environment. And I think that also speaks to this kind of commentary.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's like, it's sad because Jane Austen has so much to say about, anything under the sun in 19th century culture. Like, she is such a source, like, she's great source material for understanding the culture of her time. And she's, kind of been, I don't want to say reduced to just a romance writer, but she's been sort of put into this pink box where it's just all about the love story and not about like the things that she is critiquing and like the gender issues that she's talking about, the social issues that she's talking about, the, how brutally unfair this culture can be to women, to poor people, to any kind of marginalized person. Like, she addresses all of those things. And so much of it now, because of pop culture, has been turned into, oh, it's a love story. And there's so much more to say about that. And I mean, I love love stories. That's what I'm about here. But it's also like, I don't want her to be just considered that one thing and be just in that one box.
Oh no, I think this is so fascinating. I think this whole has to do with the elevator pitch. I mean, there's only so much you can say at one time when it comes to Austen. And yes, I mean, the love story is probably the biggest part, so people just zone in on that. But I mean, there's one adaptation. I'm trying to remember. It was Mansfield Park, where they actually worked slavery into the narrative.
Yeah.
I mean, it lends itself to so many topics and societal issues and the themes. Oh.
Yeah, and it's in the original text of Mansfield Park that, oh my God, what's his name? Whoever the Bertram patriarch is. I've never read Mansfield Park. Don't get at me. But I still have not read Mansfield Park. But yeah, it's on my list because I'm doing this read along thing. But he is actually, the subtext is that he owns slaves in somewhere in the Caribbean. And so that's there. It's something that she talks about, she addresses, and I don't know if she fully resolves that, because I mean, how do you resolve slavery in a book that is not ostensibly about slavery? But like, it is something that she is discussing. It's something that's part of her culture that she cares about, and it's there.
I'm still. We got to get you reading Mansfield Park.
I know.
Well, you're the Pride and Prejudice expert. Like, you're like, this is my book. I respect that.
I've read all of the other ones. It's just Mansfield Park that I tried a couple of times and I pieced out after a couple of pages. But I'm gonna read it because I have to.
It's so fun. I remember, again, like thinking back, like a few years back, it was so funny when people signed up for the Jane Austen class. This is why, again, she writes literature. There were a lot of people who had difficulty understanding the language. There were a lot of people who would go into class complaining, saying how difficult it was. I mean, I remember that. There were a couple sour grapes in that classroom. There were two girls I will never forget. Every single time they would come to class, they would always look so put out, and they would always start by saying, "This is so difficult." Every single time, this is so difficult, because sometimes it's not an easy read. And this is, again, she's literature.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, literature doesn't have to be difficult, but I don't think it's not, Mansfield Park isn't a book you can devour in an afternoon, for sure. It's a book that needs some serious reflection and some serious sort of digging deep into what it's talking about. And it's something where you really need to know the culture to kind of understand what it's all about and to understand why it's important.
I mean, I'm trying to remember. I think it was Northanger Abbey. That was one of I remember I read that when again, I read Pride and Prejudice for the first time when I was, I think, 10, and so I
Wow.
remember of course, little Angela probably did not understand every single, line and relationship and societal element. I mean, some of those things probably went right over her head.
Yeah.
But I went through a period I was trying to read Jane Austen, and that was the one that I had a lot of difficulty getting through at first. And then I put that book down. I remember I read it, but again, probably went right over my head because I was probably in middle school or something at the time. And then, and then when I picked it up again as an adult, it was still something where I was going, wow, it's one of those books where, I mean, again, I think, she's literature.
Yeah.
She has her, she vehemently dislikes something, and you'll have all these. I mean,
It's something that you have to kind of go back to, and it allows you to go back and dig in deeper to, like, there's more spaces that you can explore just than the surface.
I love Jane Austen. I feel like we could do like a stream on every single one of her books. I mean, honestly,
You can, for sure.
she's amazing. I love her so much. I really do. This is so much to talk about too. I know this is a very free-flowing conversation about Pride and Prejudice. I'm curious, for those people who are still watching, if you have any questions or thoughts or something you'd like us to touch on when it comes to Pride and Prejudice or Jane Austen. I mean, you're just so much fun to talk to. I'm like, this is great.
Yeah, this is getting to another one of our epic conversations, I think.
I mean, you're so sweet and so fascinating. I'm like, I love talking Jane Austen with you. And even though even though you chose a 95, and you also broke my heart. You also broke my heart with another relationship and another pick.
Yeah. Okay, these happened at formative times in my life, Angela. Like, Pride and Prejudice 95 came out when I was like 14, 15. So it was like important. Buffy, I was like 17.
This is the other one. So people, for those of you who maybe you're still watching, or I'm a Spike and Buffy girl. You are not.
No, I'm Buffy Angel all the way. All the way. Still, 20 years later.
I think that is a live stream discussion unto itself. That one is a full debate. I mean, I'm so happy to have another Buffy friend. I mean, I don't care that show ended years and years ago. It is still one of my all-time favorites. I love it.
Yeah.
I mean, a little blonde, a little blonde who can take care of herself. I like that image.
Yes. And I mean, my type in terms of like the stories that I gravitate to are like the badass girl and the hot broody dude who is in awe of her. That is like my catnip. That's what I want to read about. That's what I want to see. And that is like all of my OTPs are that type.
I love how you just said it. I love how you just said my OTPs. Your one true pairing.
My one true pairings are
I love you like my OTP. Like, you've said that so many times, it's just second nature. My OTPs.
I've been deep into fandom for a long time.
I was gonna say, where are the books? I have all my fandom books over here. They're books on fandoms, analyzing fandoms.
Ooh, nice. I like it.
Hey, someone agrees with me. Second baby. Hey, I'm winning tonight. These are my people.
You are winning tonight.
We need to you said you're going to have some friends who are going to watch. I was going to say, they need to vote. Be like, yes, I'm on your side.
Guys, friends, please, let's show Angela our 95 love.
I mean, I was giving you the one scene I was giving you was the one scene you're like, not so much. That was fun.
I mean, it's good. It's good. There are other good scenes in that adaptation, like the whole Pemberley experience, with the gift that I sent to you, the hard eyes, like them looking at each other. That's it. That's all I need. Just them looking at each other.
And then I'm pretty sure I sent back the GIF with Mr. Collins, where he's going, "I'm seducing you with my eyes."
Yeah. Thanks a lot.
There's a GIF. If you guys go to Twitter and just type in Mr. Collins, will be one of the first few that pops up. He's sitting there eating his dinner and he's like looking around the table, and the way his eyes dart back and forth is absolutely hysterical. It will make me. You're like, not so much. And I was gonna say, if anyone else has any questions, comments, is there anything else with Pride and Prejudice or Jane Austen you're like, I really want to talk about this?
I don't know. I will let anybody else jump in though. Just there's so much in the Jane Austen world that you can go to, and anything that you are into, you can find it in Jane Austen fanfic and Jane Austen adaptations. It is there. Anything you have a remote interest in, someone has written some kind of adaptation about Lizzie and Darcy doing that.
Again, I was just watching Unleashing Mr. Darcy. They're both dog people, so they're show dogs, and he's judging the dog contest. I mean, that's clever. I mean,
you get like, and there are tons of things like that where it's just like, okay, put them in any profession that you can possibly think of. Put them in any country you want. Put them, whatever, anything. A friend of mine wrote like a brilliant time travel one that's kind of like Outlander-esque, and it was amazing. And like, how do you do these things? How do you there's so many ways that you can transfer the story and transfer these characters into.
I love that. And I just saw the comment. It says, to my both stands, as you never followed Buffy too closely, you're like, I'm big on Eric and Suki from True Blood, I'm guessing.
I never watched True Blood, so I can't offer an opinion on that.
I mean, I think it's so funny. On True Blood, it wasn't even a triangle. It was a rectangle or an octagon or something. There were so many levels on that show. It was hysterical to me. Because you had, I think his name was Bill, Vampire Bill. Then you had Eric, the tall blonde. Then you had the werewolf, Alcide. And then Sam Merlot, the bar owner. I mean, everyone was just in love with Suki. So everyone loved Suki Saka. I was like, that was just, apparently she was the one single gal everybody loved on that show.
Maybe she just had like really tasty blood or something. Was that a thing? I don't know. I didn't watch it.
Yeah, that's actually part of it. She was part fair or something, and so she was like very attractive to the vampires. So the novels. The tall blonde who played Tarzan. Now we're just going down on tangents. We're like, and who else do we want to talk about? Yeah, what do we talk about? Is there anything else? No, yeah. Yeah, the True Blood books totally different than the show. Very different. Have you read?
I never read them. They're not super vampire fan, except for Buffy, really.
I was about to say, you have to be a little bit of a vampire fan.
I mean, yeah, like of all the supernatural creatures, I guess vampires win for me, but I'm not super into paranormal stuff.
Do you like paranormal, like shifter romances?
No, I've never gotten into them, so I don't really like understand the appeal, except for like because I watched Buffy and was into like the vampire stuff, that I kind of get that, but that's it. So I don't have like the shifter stuff. I'm just like, okay.
Have you ever edited a shifter romance?
No, I've never edited a paranormal before. I don't think. I might have one coming up, but no, never edited one before.
Oh my goodness. So you basically been editing like within the Jane Austen wheelhouse.
No, I edit romance stuff. So I've edited like historical romance and contemporary romance. And I don't know if I've done anything sort of outside of that and outside of Jane Austen. But like historical, contemporary are kind of where I'm at.
I was gonna say, so me and my little shifter romance story over here, I was like, oh, so she gonna be able to.
I will read it. Is that what you're writing?
I have so many stories. I actually have a Pride and Prejudice one.
Really?
Yeah, I do. I have one. That was actually one of the first things I wrote. It's at like, I don't remember if it's at 60 or 65,000 words. It's a YA, so yeah. Actually, you know, again, me and my Jane Austen. I'm not kidding when I say I love her beyond anything else. I mean, I'm really I read Jane Austen. You know, I was writing an adaptation of Jane Austen. That was like one of the first real books that I wrote, because I wrote one and it was terrible. It was so bad when I look back.
Everyone's first one is terrible.
It was so bad. You know, I mean, dialogue tags apparently were not a thing in my mind. And then
The editor in me is like, oh.
oh, it was so, it was, I mean, I was 18 when I wrote it. So the first one I wrote was, you know, I think it was like 50, maybe 55, maybe 60,000. So bad. Just so bad. And then Jane Austen was like 2 or 3 books later. So that was when I was starting to get like my writing feet, that, you know, I was trying to, so I think there's a little bit more potential with that one than the first one. But yeah, that's one of them.
And what are you working on like right now? Or do you have like a bunch on the go?
I have so many, but I've been working on the dissertation stuff.
Yeah.
So put it on the back burner a little bit.
Yeah.
I'd love to get back into get back into editing the one that I was working on, though. But the one that I had been currently editing was the shifter piece, because I think it's just so much fun. That one, to me, I just loved it. I love my characters so much. I mean, you know, I know you're not supposed to get emotionally invested, but those, you know, they're my little babies, and so
I really don't understand how you can't get emotionally invested in your own characters. Like, how? How do you have that distance? I don't understand.
I just love them. Like, they're so much fun to write, and I kind of just needed like an outlet at the time. So, you know, I had these, like, that was how they were born. And then we have a question for you. How long have you been editing?
I've been editing like as in my business for a year and a bit. And then I've done like other editing stuff in the past. So I edited, you know, academic stuff and business stuff. And then I was an actual medical editor for a rehab company for a while. So I've done editing for a long time, but the actual fiction stuff and actually making it a business where I'm getting like paid specifically for my editing, about a year and a half.
And if you're in need of editing services, I linked
Yeah.
it down below in the description box. So if
Yes.
you're reading a romance novel, I am giving you a plug.
Right down there. Thank you. I do free sample edits too. So there you go. Easy to try out.
Oh my gosh, you're so sweet. I'm like, I'm going to keep you, and then we're going to do more of this. Oh my goodness.
But yeah, if you want to do like, we want to talk romance again, let's talk romance again. Probably some other time, because this is getting super long.
I know, we were running. I'm like, no wonder the dog was looking at me like, Mommy, you're ignoring me. I was like, I didn't mean to. This is just, we're talking Jane Austen. This is it gets lost in thoughts.
You gotta understand, dog. It's Jane Austen time. My kid understands Jane Austen time. Like, why do you like Jane Austen so much? I'm like, I don't know how to explain that to a 4-year-old.
You're like, someday you'll understand.
Someday you'll get it, kid, and you'll understand why there's all this Jane Austen paraphernalia around the house.
I know, because I know we have been talking a while, so if you guys have any final thoughts, questions, comments, you know, please type them now, because eventually we are going to have to go to sleep because it is getting late. I mean, you're just so much fun to talk to, though. I love having you. I'm like, oh, man, you're a guest. I love you.
Yeah, it's so easy to talk to you. That is the nice part, that there's no like awkward pauses, because I am kind of the queen of awkward pauses.
No, I don't think we've had one awkward silence.
I don't think we have, which is impressive.
I was just saying, the only awkward we've had is Mr. Collins.
Yeah, and our, you know, fights about 95 versus 05. Thank you, Lady Gizmo. You're so sweet.
Oh, I know. I was like, you're the best guest. I'm like, we gotta get Sarah back over here and talk more romance. I'm so glad to like introduce you to. I'm like, let's get out of the world, the romance community.
Yay, romance community! Yay, Jane Austen community! All good people.
I know we did cover a lot. We really did.
We cover a lot, like a lot.
I know. Thank you. She's like, great job. I'm like, I will take that. I will wear that like little gold star. I'm so proud. Like, yes, proud of us. This has been such a great conversation.
Yes, definitely.
Oh my goodness, it's been so exciting though. I mean, I love this conversation. I know. So I mean, unless anyone has any final thoughts, I should probably let you go after a certain point.
I would like to go to sleep at some point tonight. That would be nice.
Yes, I understand. It's been a long day myself.
I bet. How's all your interviewing going?
Interviewing has become kind of a full-time job.
Seems like.
I honestly never expected to get as many reach. I mean, we talked before the tweet went out, so I mean, you were one of my first interviews. Again, I love you and appreciate you so much for that. So
It's so fun.
yeah, no. So the tweet went out, and then I got this huge response. I never expected that, and so it's been.
Romancelandia provides.
They did. I mean, the romance community was just so supportive. I mean, it was just, I mean, I was crying at 90 retweets. I was going, this is the best thing ever. I was so moved and touched. And then 400 retweets later, my jaw is just on the floor going, what? And then I'm finding out like Nalini Singh retweeted me, Angela James, the editor at Harlequin, retweeted me. I'm finding out, who was it else? Like Sarah McLean, I'm like, you people, like, how? I mean,
You know me now.
this is so amazing. So it went through like a lot of people's feeds, and so I mean, it's so. I mean, I'm beyond words. I mean, I was crying. I mean, it was so amazing to see that. And people have been so sweet to take the time out of the day to talk to me. I mean, and everyone has such different experiences. I mean, this is the thing about the romance genre.
Yeah. That's cool though. And are you like winding down the interviews or are you just like keep going?
So I will give you a little insight. So Monday is going to be my cutoff day to do interviews for a while because I still need to transcribe. And I also would like to revisit my questions to see if there's something else I should have added or reworked or, whatever. So I'm giving myself till Monday to do some more interviews. I have, I think, 6 or 7 more scheduled before on Monday or during the weekend. And again, like this isn't a full-time job. Like, there have been some days I've been like doing interviews from like 9 a.m. till 9 p.m. trying to work out like time differences. I mean, there's some nights I was staying up late. I mean, this has been a real thing. So I kind of need to give myself till Monday, and then I need to take a little break to revisit, and then we'll see what happens.
Good call. And, it'd be nice to actually write the dissertation at some point too.
Well, I mean,
but, the research part I always found the research part way more fun than the writing part.
Well, now comes the transcriptions, and then I'm going to do in vivo to look for keywords and nodes and all that fun stuff. So that's going to take a lot of time. So it's going to be a process. It's going to be a while before I have any results to share. Be like, on this. That's going to be a while. But you're so sweet to ask, though. I mean, that's how we met. And like, I'm keeping you.
I think it's such an interesting project, and that you actually get to study romance novels. That's pretty fun.
I mean, it's for me. I'm really excited by the fact I'm talking about the readers, because I think there's a lot of, I mean, there's not a lot of studies on the romance genre, and then there's even less so on the readers. So yeah. Maybe I can contribute something in a very real way. And again, this is not an easy undertaking, so I totally understand why it's not studied that much. Qualitative versus quantitative research is a real numbers in a way are actually much easier to get
and to like play with.
Yeah, because I mean, again, I've done statistics. Even though I love English, I did do a couple advanced statistics classes when I was doing my master's, and like you can play with numbers, you can run different algorithms, like you can do different stuff to put it in different formulas to see what's going to happen, and so you can play around until you get results that are statistically significant. When you're doing quantitative versus qualitative, like when you're doing ethnographic research, it's very, very different.
Yeah. Well, good luck with it. I hope it comes to something really cool and you get like really great results out of it.
You're so sweet. I'm so happy. I'm so happy with it.
Yeah, me too.
Our conversation ended up becoming Jane Austen related. It was so funny too. I'm supposed to be like the stoic little interviewer, and then you start talking about Jane Austen, and I'm going, yes.
You must have had like a bunch of Jane Austen people though, or did they just not admit their love?
It's so funny. This is what I mean about doing interviews and why I think it's taking me longer, because there's no such thing as an average romance reader.
Yeah.
That's not true. So you're supposed to interview until you reach interviewer saturation. And so like, how do you determine what the saturation level is if everyone's so different and across the board? And so Jane Austen's only come up a handful of times, and I've done a number of interviews at this point. So it's interesting to see what lends itself and, what conversations kind of emerge. I mean, you would think a lot of people would say Jane Austen was their first romance novel, but that's not the case.
Yeah. I imagine it's more like mine is I was just stealing my mom's romance novels that were hanging around the house. So Jane Austen didn't like enter into the picture at all until much later because the romance novels were there from for as long as I can remember. So yeah, mine was some random Harlequin that I don't remember anymore because I had to read it like stealthily.
I mean, again, I know this is the debate we just had, but for me, Jane Austen was probably the first. I mean, I read Jane Austen again. I don't think I understood it all when I was 10 years old. I don't think little Angela, probably went over her head. But I remember reading that when I was 10, and I would read all the Meg Cabots and Sarah Dessens and everything like that.
Mhm.
So I was reading the the young adult romances. So I was kind of in the same vicinity. So romance was just kind of a natural progression.
See, I think the reason is because you came of age after 95 came out. I came of age when 95 came out. And so there's this whole like renewed interest in Jane Austen because of 95 and how popular it was. And so it was already kind of in pop culture by the time you were 10 years old and reading Jane Austen. For me, it wasn't there until 95 actually hit. And that was when Jane Austen like mania started.
To be fair, I think I was reading it because I wanted to read it before, because the movie, like they had just come out saying there's going to be a Jane Austen movie. So I was like, I'm going to read this before there's a Jane Austen movie, and then the movie came out sometime later, and then I had my love affair with Mr. Darcy. I was just going, I love you.
Yeah. Well, who doesn't?
I know, seriously, who doesn't? We need to have that's a debate. You don't
We
love
should have had the full-on Darcy debate. But that is a long conversation.
We will never go to sleep if that is the case.
That is true. We'll try it again another time.
Oh my gosh. No, I'm totally, you are invited back anytime you want. You are just such a pleasure to talk to, and you're so much fun.
Me too.
Like, time of Pride and Prejudice, talking about with someone who loves Pride and Prejudice like I do.
It's so nice. It's so nice to just talk to somebody about like this things that I mean, like anybody wants to talk about people who know like the same kind of, who speak the same language as you and are into the same things as you. It's so much easier to talk to people when you have that commonality and you're both coming from a shared world where you don't have to explain it to people and you don't have to be like, this is the romance genre, this is why it's important. And you can just like skip that and be like, let's jump into like the good stuff.
I was like, we have a comment. I was trying to read it. I was doing my weird lean in with my head hitting the webcam. In between both of you age wise. Okay, so you're like I'm in the middle of this spectrum. I'm like, I'm not going to divulge my age. I'm not going to do that. I'm getting the little things around my eyes, so I'm not going to do that. You'd only got into Jane Austen during your senior year of high school in 2003. I remember in high school, I was in AP English. It was so funny. They gave us an option of 3 books. It was Wuthering Heights, Jane Eyre, or Pride and Prejudice, and you can guess which one I read.
Those were like my top 3 books when I was in high school. Those are my favorites, all of them, which explains a lot about me. I think
we were meant to talk. We were meant to connect because I mean, Mr. Rochester is another conversation topic. But I love how you got into Jane Austen in high school because that means you probably got more of the references than I did when I was 10 years old.
Well, like I think I can't remember if I read the book first or if I saw the miniseries first. So I can't chicken and egg that one. But they're tied in together. I don't know. But it definitely happened around the same time. And it might have been, I should read this before I watch this, or I've watched this and now I want to see how the book stacks up and how well it was adapted.
I just looked up and saw Luke Evans over Dracula, or Luke Evans or Dracula. I love that. I just looked up and saw that. Oh, you got into so is the Emma movie, the Gwyneth Paltrow one? There's this There's a scene where she made this world kind of Christmas ornament type of situation that I can never get over. I'm like, why did you make this?
I don't remember that at all. I don't think I've seen the Gwyneth Paltrow one since it like came out.
Honestly, I think Clueless is the best adaptation of Emma. That is my favorite adaptation. Emma
100%.
Proved is brilliant, but Emma Proved is great, but Clueless, best adaptation of Emma.
Clueless, 100%. No one
Hey, we finally agree on something.
Yes. Yes. Finally, we agree on something.
There's all meant to find commonality for Jane Austen, but like we found it.
Yes. I think everyone can agree on the awesomeness of Clueless.
Oh yeah. I mean, I also think the way Mr. Knightley is adapted is very, very clever.
Yeah, and I think that's it. It's the cleverness of that adaptation that really kind of makes it work, and how they modernized it for the time.
Again, I think this is another like great conversation last topic. Oh my gosh. I think we could do like an entire month just talking about Jane Austen stuff.
We totally could.
Yes, Clueless is awesome. It is just, I mean, I love Alicia Silverstone in that movie. I remember, I forget if it was the audio commentary, because again, I'm that person, but at one point she was talking about how she had heard the language, she had the characters, but she didn't have the story. So she had the entire setup of, how she wanted them to talk, how she wanted them to dress, but she didn't have the story. And then she read Emma, and all of a sudden she went, it's my story. And so again, Jane Austen, she lends herself
to everything.
Oh my gosh, that is again another conversation topic. I'm just gonna keep you hostage now. I mean, is there anything else you guys wanted to touch on when it comes to Jane Austen? I mean, because now it's 10:08 where I am.
Yeah, me too.
I know you're in the same time zone, even though you're in Canada.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
But wow, thanks everybody for like hanging in for 2 hours. That's impressive.
I know like the numbers have gone up and down. I've seen it fluctuate, but you guys are awesome. I mean, it's so nice to know there are other Austenites or Janeites. I know some people say one, some people say the other. Janeites, awesome.
Yeah, Janeites are some of the best people, I think.
They really are.
Yeah.
The romance community, the Janeites.
Yeah.
It's a community to be a part of.
Yes. Exactly.
I mean, was there anything else you wanted to touch on before I let you go to sleep?
I think I'm good. Are you good?
I've had the best time. I love this conversation so much. And I think if you guys have romance novels, you should send them to Sarah. I have her website. I have her links. I have your Twitter handle, your Facebook link. So your blog link. I think everyone should just go follow you everywhere.
Thanks. Please do.
And they should read your blog post about writing fan fiction.
Yeah, because it's such an important, or such a good way to learn about yourself as a writer. Even if you don't publish it, or even if you just put it online and you don't do anything but put it online. It's such a good way to learn so much about the kind of writer you want to be and how you can become that.
I love that answer so much. You're speaking my little heart over here. You really are. Oh my goodness. Especially because I think that's actually what I do with my own little adaptation. I think I'm like a living example of learning to write based off of Jane Austen.
And lots of people do that with fanfic, and there's so many published authors who come from fanfic. And I think it used to be more of a stigma that you didn't really ever want to admit that you wrote fanfic, and once you became a published author. But I think so many people are getting away from that now and are totally fine with being like, yeah, I write fanfic. It helps me in my writing original characters. It helps me figure out what genre I want to be in, or, the kinds of things that I'm interested in writing about.
That is such a brilliant answer. I feel like someone should take that and quote you and put that somewhere. I don't know what article that
Somebody do. Go for it.
You're so great. I love it. Oh my gosh. And the dog, he's growling. He's like, get away from my treat. I'm like, I'm sitting here. I'm not near your treat.
Poor Max.
I know. He only made one little cameo.
Oh, at least he showed up. Thanks, Max.
Promise people a dog. They got a dog. He might be growling, but he exists.
Done. He's still cute.
He's very fluffy right now.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. This has just been so much fun. I'm so thankful that everyone, tuned in and joined us. You're just the sweetest human being, and I'm so happy we were able to do this.
Me too. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so glad that we got to talk. And anytime you want to talk, like on air or whenever, you let me know.
Hey, same is true over here. I'm so happy to have a Jane Austen friend, and
Yay, Austen friends.
and I'm like, hey, if you guys are writing romances, I'm like, I have a recommendation for you. You got to. Oh my gosh, you're just so sweet. I'm so happy we were able to do this tonight, and you guys are so awesome for watching. I'm so appreciative of you guys commenting and fangirling over Pride and Prejudice and Jane Austen with us. This is a great Thursday night. It's awesome.
Thanks, fangirls, fan boys, if there are any. Thanks, fan people.
Well, according to YouTube, I have an entirely 100% female audience. I don't know if that's completely accurate, but according to YouTube, I have an entirely female demographic. So I always say hello to my ladies.
I mean, Austen fandom tends to be overwhelmingly female. There are definitely men in it, and there are definitely men writing Austen fanfic, but they tend to be few and far between. But good for them for getting into that predominantly female space and where it is overwhelmingly female.
Well, all genders are welcome for this live stream and any live stream in the future. You are welcome to join us, the Jane Austen romance conversation. I'd love to hear that. And you are so sweet. Oh, I know I probably should get to bed, and you should too. And this has just been so much fun. I'm so happy we were able to do this, and just a big smile.
Thanks so much for having me, Angela. And thanks everybody for being here.
I know. Thank you guys so much for watching, and just thank you so much for joining me tonight. It's been such a fun, fun night, and such an honor and pleasure, and just, thank you.
Too. Anytime.
Bye, lovelies. Have a nice night.
Bye, everyone. Bye, Angela. Thank you.